A deadly terror attack that took place in Colorado. 8 people have been injured after a man started setting people on fire at an outdoor mall in Boulder in Colorado. In fact, officials say that the reports highlight that the suspect is a 45-year-old Mohamed Sabry Soliman, who is an Egyptian national whose visa had expired. The FBI says the suspected act of terrorism happened during a peaceful event in support of Israeli hostages. It happens weekly. So it's a weekly meeting in support of the Israeli hostages. Remember, there are still 25 of them who are alive, and it's been almost 19 months. Israel's foreign minister calls the incident a terrible anti-Semitic terror attack targeting Jews. I want to first play out this soundbite of what the police officials have to say, and then we come back and talk more about what this means for America, fight against terror, and more importantly, well, the war against anti-Semitism that America is doing right now. But first up, the police official soundbite.
The initial response by our officers, we were on scene very quickly. When we arrived, we encountered multiple victims that were injured with injuries consistent with burns and other injuries. While our officers and paramedics and fire department personnel got those victims quickly to the hospital, our officers were pointed out, a suspect was pointed out to our officers on the scene. Our officers immediately encountered that suspect who was taken into custody without incident.
All right, let's get in Glenn Carle, who's a former CIA officer, to talk more about this. Glenn, it's a shocking case, yet another instance of anti-Semitism that's coming to light. At a time when many in American campuses are feeling, well, the Trump administration's crackdown looks one-sided. So there are several legs to this. Also at a time when global action against terror is getting united. Your first thoughts on how this is likely to shape war against terror on a global front?
Oh, on the global front, that's an ambitious question to ask. I think the central issue that's happening here is, in the American context at least, is that it has become almost impossible to separate expressing frustration with Israel from anti-Semitism, or with criticism of Hamas with Palestinian sufferings. That makes any discourse almost impossible. Now, what this man did is hideous, and he should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. In the international, of course, in the international context, it's a continuation, I would say, the way this has been characterized by the Prime Minister of Israel and by the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. It's a continuation of a reductionist approach that makes the issue binary. Either one supports Israel or one is an anti-Semite.
But incidents like this do make it binary, doesn't it?
Anti-Israel.
Incidents like this do make it binary, because at the end of the day, this was a meeting for the Israeli hostages who've been held captive since 7th of
no
October.
Justification for it.
So it does make it binary, doesn't it?
It's binary about any terrorist act, any act of violence. Absolutely. Please don't get me wrong on that. But the demonstrations that are going on in this case, calling in support of keeping attention on the hostages and that they should be released, and that it's a terrible act that the Hamas has perpetrated, has been rolled into the larger issue of Israel, anti-Semitism, Palestine, and Hamas. And it becomes nearly impossible to take any position which is other than, in the American context now, support for Israel, and that makes it difficult. Or one can't say anything without running into that.
So in some sense, what you're saying is,
of course, it's hideous.
In some sense, what you're saying, sir, is that it strengthens Benjamin Netanyahu's position. It strengthens Trump administration's crackdown, even on international students on campuses. as, of course,
Certainly.
war on terror continues, right? So that's essentially the larger ramification of this. But I want to understand from you that given the fact that FBI is treating this as an act of terror, how do you see that likely to reshape America's policies when it comes to acting against terror?
I don't see it as changing American policies. Any action taken against a Jewish person or organization or demonstration anywhere will be characterized as rolled into probably as a terrorist threat. In the similar way in American campuses now, the focus is on anti-Semitism, but that's really come in to represent anti-Israeli policies or being hostile to Israeli policies. And the two things are not necessarily the same, but that change or imperative will be even more true now, given this hideous event in Colorado.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks much for joining me on that story.